If you constantly feel behind, like you're spinning your wheels and making no progress, then you're not alone. I used to feel the same until I applied the same frameworks that I use as a finance manager to my own life. What I'm about to show you is the exact system that I use to focus, execute, and grow without burnout or overwhelm. My name's Jayan. I'm a finance manager and a qualified chartered accountant for a business unit that has over $100 million in revenue. But like most people, I used to just wing my own personal goals until I realized that I can plan my own life and professional life more like a business. This is the exact system that I used, heavily influenced by the book The 12-Week Year, to get meaningful results without wasting time or burning out. Annual goals just don't work. You set them at the start of the year and by February they're a distant mess. 12 weeks in my experience, and I've done this many times now, is definitely the solution. You have 12 weeks to make meaningful progress towards some serious goals that are going to change your life without having this extended period of time where you think you have all the time in the world, or a really short amount of time where you just can't achieve real results. So section 1. So we've established that we should have some 12-week goals to set some direction to move us from point A to point B and grow as a person. So setting some 12-week goals for yourself. A really good way to frame this, if you don't know what goals you have, is to use something called the Wheel of Life, which a lot of people have put in different formats, but essentially there are 3 main sections. You have your work, you have your relationships, and then you have your money. These are generally the main places that most people spend their time. Within this section, you want to pick 2 to 3 outcomes that really matter to you, that are really going to move the needle and are a realistic stretch on what you think is possible. Don't set things that are completely achievable, and don't set things that are too far out of your comfort zone, and don't set more than 2 or 3, because you just cannot focus on that many really important things at once and make meaningful progress. For me personally, this 12-week year, my goal was to fix my shoulder injury with my rotator cuff and also my hip mobility from another running injury that I had. And another goal of mine was to post 1 video consistently on YouTube every single week. Once you've got these written down, if these goals aren't actions by themselves, then you need to translate these goals into actions that you can actually take to achieve them. So for example, for me with my hip and shoulder, some of the actions that I had beneath this were come up with a specific plan for the exercises to fix both of these problems, and then also schedule workouts every single week, and also go to the gym 3 times a week so that I actually make some progress on this. So section 2, now we've got your 12-week goals and rough actions that you need to take. You need to translate this into a weekly basis. Every Sunday evening or Monday morning, if I don't have time on the Sunday, I'll look at my 12-week goals and look at the actions that I can take this week to move closer towards them. And I'll show you right here how I would do this for the goals that we just set out. And this is just a rough overview. I've gone to 1 week that is relatively clear in my calendar. You can see here that there are some recurring things that I usually do. So for certain, I guaranteed will be going into the office on Thursdays, and every Monday morning I'll take 1 hour to plug in and plan the week and look at emails, look at priorities and plan what is happening in my work week, as well as have a weekly touch point call with the senior leadership team. The only things that are going in the calendar here are definite commitments. I usually go to the gym in the morning, so I'll add the gym block on 3 separate days. I'll usually do this on a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday. And then separately, I wanted to have a YouTube video produced. So roughly, it's a bit more complicated than this, but you go from idea, you'd have the recording, and then you'd have the editing, and also you'd have some publishing. And I'm aiming to get a video out every single Sunday. So on the Monday evening after work, I'd usually put in some time, maybe an hour, for the idea, as well as some of the value in the things that I'm going to talk about. And then I'd move on to the filming. Now this is sometimes hard to fit around the schedule and gets moved around a lot. So just for this, I'm going to put it in on the Tuesday morning and put it as record. And this is just the main take of the video. And then the last part is to do the editing. So I'd usually do this in some of the evenings and whenever I have spare time. So I'd put this one in for Wednesday, edit. And this is just an example. This is roughly how I would do things. It'll be a little bit more in depth than this. And I'd add in a lot more commitments that I have, calls that I cannot move, and commitments that I've made, as well as any plans. And this week doesn't include any social plans because just for this video, I wanted a relatively blank week. If it isn't scheduled, it doesn't get done. And the aim is not to be 100% perfect with this things can move around, but at least you have an anchor for what you need to do. And 80% execution is better than none. If you go from roughly having an idea and procrastinating and not doing it, to this situation where you have a plan of what you need to do, you know it takes you towards the goals that you want to achieve, and then you have a time schedule to do it, you're much more likely to do it. And you might not do it every single time, but it's way better than nothing. At this point, it's over to you to execute. There are many different ways that you can use to stay on track and ensure that you get towards your goals. And I can cover these in more videos. Just let me know what you want to see in the comments. Moving on to section 3 of this plan is the weekly review. At the end of the week, you should now have executed on a lot of the goals and the plans that you had. But you need a checkpoint to review your actual progress. So at this point, I'd usually pull up Apple Notes and have some initial questions that I would fill out. This changes week on week sometimes, but let me pull up exactly what I'd usually do. So I've got my Apple Note here, and at the top, within the 12-week year, I'll put on which week we are in, and then I'd put in the date for whatever, let's just say it's June, and let's just say it's something like the 10th of June. It'll be whatever the Monday's date is, and then June, and then whatever the Sunday's date is for the end of that week. I'd initially start out by looking at some weekly wins. So did I execute on what I intended to execute on? And really counting your wins. You need to celebrate all the progress that you make, because that's really important. And measure yourself from where you started, not to where you're going. And so I'd write some of these down. And to be honest, my aim is to achieve at least 70% execution, because 70% is way better than nothing. So I'd add these in. I'd add some key takeaways. So these are where I potentially struggled, some gaps or things that I want to carry forward in terms of real actions into the following week. And the reflections are more understanding about myself, what went well, potential strengths and weaknesses that I have, and a little bit more of understanding who you are and how you operate after you go through this period of time. And then the final bit would be, what are the clear next intentions that you might have? These are real things that you need to execute again next week. So when you come around to planning, you still have your weekly plan and your goals. These are maybe things that are going to drive you forwards more, that you've realized this week that you really need to do. And I really want to be clear here. This isn't about perfection. This is about having action and real movement and a system that actually works. You don't have to be 100% perfect, but having some momentum and hitting 80% of what you need to do is a very, very clear win. And this works because you might have busy work that doesn't actually take you towards your goals, and you can execute on that busy work, but it doesn't actually take you there. At least this way you have real goals and then real actions on a weekly basis that take you towards that goal. That's compounding progress, and that's the real win. If you want more systems like this and practical real world advice that help you use your time and energy better, subscribe. I'm building more videos like this, as well as in the future, a tool that helps automate this for you. If that's something that you like the sound of, then you probably appreciate this video right here.